Hi Bernhard, how are you?
Hi, Carsten. Good, thank you.
Did you recover from our last video, right? Huh? Now an easy one. What
Yeah.
are we doing?
So this one should be a short video about downloading images from the Azure Marketplace on top of our Azure Stack HCI system, right, in order to create virtual machines from it. Downloading the Marketplace image is, I think, the most important step, or maybe not the most important step, but the step that probably everybody will do, right, if you're
Yes,
doing
yes.
Azure Virtual Desktop, right?
Let
So
me add, this video is not complex, but the video after that, then we are doing some great stuff. So let's dive into it. I switch to my screen.
yeah, let's see if we can
So
do easy, right?
yeah.
Um,
We can't do easy. Okay. So
yeah,
what do we see here? I still have my cluster up here. Our AVD hosts are shut down by our scaling plan, but this was another video. So I
yeah,
focus on the resource group where
hmm
we want to provide an image. And as you said, for our AVD deployment, we already needed an image. So we have one here, and that is the image that we later will work with because there's already Office in there, Teams in there, and so on. So now we can't download this one. We have to choose another one. So how do
yeah.
we do that?
So the starting point for the image management is the cluster, right? So it is the cluster object. You can navigate through the Azure Arc components to it, or directly go to your
Yeah,
Azure Stack HCI cluster.
I'm in here. So
And
here we have a VM images. Yeah.
right. And as you said, we've done that before, so we see at least one image that was already downloaded before.
Hmm.
But now we are showing how to do it and how the dialogues look like. So if you could add another virtual machine image, and you have some choices, right? So the first one we will do in a second, so we will skip a little bit the talking about it. Let me just do the other two ones, right?
Yeah.
So in a later video, we will add and customize an image that is stored locally, right? So
Hmm.
once we have downloaded an image, we probably want to add some applications to it or maybe some language packs to it. And then we need to suck it into Azure, right? And the way on how to do it is, by that section here from the local share.
Hmm.
The option in the middle would be the approach if you do the image handling in Azure, right? So you customize the image, you do your stuff in an Azure virtual machine, and then you create an image from, and you probably create a disk from and put it into an Azure storage account, right? So
Hmm.
that would be the cloud way of maybe image management, right? So, and for doing that, Azure storage account, I think, is the option here.
Can
To
I
be
add
honest,
something?
yeah, please.
Yeah. So maybe you also have a shared AVD environment, some images
Mm,
in Azure, some locally, and you have done all the work for your
right.
images that you use in Azure. So that would be a nice thing
Yeah.
here.
The
Yeah.
thing is, Azure provides, some technology around creating images, custom images as well, and then doing it all, at one place and suck it in from the Azure storage account is maybe probably the easier way.
Yeah.
But let's start with from the Azure Marketplace, right?
Yeah, let me add something because when you say suck it in, that's
hmm
an important part. If we want to
Right.
deploy VMs in this cluster, the
hmm
image has to be locally in in the cluster. It has to be on in one of the user passes, right? So
hmm
we can't
hmm
say download, create a VM and download the image directly from Azure or use an image from Azure. We have to
Mm.
provide it locally in the cluster.
Yeah, and we will see that, right, when we're doing it. And that's
Yeah.
probably, and that makes totally sense to have the image preloaded or pre-staged on the cluster itself, right? Because you don't want to download or prolong the creation time just by the
Hmm.
downloading it from Azure, right? So it wouldn't
Yeah.
make sense, to be honest, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Um,
So now
what
we
images do you want to take, or where do you want to store it?
Yeah. That is this choice. We can Azure Stack HCI or Azure decide which storage path it will use,
Mhm.
or we can choose a storage path manually. So say use this storage path. Let me do that first. Yeah,
Mhm.
we have two storage paths in this cluster, so we could specify the storage path, or some people want to have a special image directory, and then you
Mhm.
can do that. You create an image volume or create an image path, and then you have to add it as a storage path to the cluster, and then you can choose that.
Mhm.
I let the cluster decide for himself where to put
Mhm.
the image. So I'm fine with
Yeah.
that. The,
So this translates to a local cluster shared volume, right?
yeah,
And the ones that you had
I can
identified
show them again.
that you were deploying the cluster with the default settings, right? Because the
Hmm.
naming would then end up with user storage 1, 2, depending on how many nodes you have, and that with a GUID, right? So
Hmm.
however, you could have, if you created the stores or the cluster shared volumes by yourself afterwards, there is one step. You need to tell Azure, which kind of volumes you have locally, right?
Yeah,
If you do the manual approach. So in order to have that entry here. So that means if you
so
don't have anything here, you need to specify a storage path for your cluster shared volume.
yeah, but this is another series we will
Yeah,
maybe do or maybe never. We don't
yeah,
know yet. So let's go back to the AVD
automatic.
part. So now
Mhm.
in the Azure Marketplace, I get offered some images, and here we see other images than in the video where we did the quick installation. There we had less images, so some time goes by. We are now in September with where we are recording this video, and Microsoft added to the server images, the 2019 images. They added also some client images here. There are more. And today we also see some SQL images prepared.
Mhm.
And we see here, this one we have already downloaded. This is the image I think most of the people use that use AVD. This is
Mhm.
the Windows 11 Enterprise multi-session with applications already installed. There's Office already in there. There's Teams in there.
Mhm.
But we have it already. So we have to choose another one.
Mhm.
And we can choose another Windows image, or we can choose a server image, because we can also do AVD with server. It's a bit different. Or we can use a server image, for example, for our scale out file server that we prepare for our FS Logic images. So Bernhard, do you want a Windows 11 Pro or Enterprise, or should we download a server version?
I don't care. You decide, right?
Oh,
Um,
then I take the server. If I have the choice, I always
right.
take server.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'm a server guy.
you see that the image list will grow and maybe shrink also as time passes by, and maybe some operating systems will die or will go away. So this is, take it as a dynamic list. It's not the full list of all the Azure images that are available. It's
Yeah,
some a curated list, if you will. Um,
yeah,
and over the time, more images
yeah. Maybe
maybe
there will
apply.
be more Linux images, Linux
Right.
images, and so on. The list will get longer.
Right.
So
I mean, the
yeah,
positive thing, I mean, we are doing this here in the Azure Virtual Desktop context, right? Although the image that you're taking is a data center image, right? But usually the benefit of taking a marketplace image also, and especially for AVD, is it has all the software already installed. And,
hmm,
for example, the Office products, they follow the best practices for it. And
yeah.
it basically saves time, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
Teams is optimized, but I have
right,
that already, Bernard. So I
right.
have to
Yeah.
choose something else.
Hmm.
And this would be, maybe you need some additional infrastructure servers to your
Right.
AVD environment. So it's not a bad choice.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
like to add an IMG minus in front of the save image as. So the resource will later, we see the resource in the portal, but this is debatable. Use your own naming conventions. You guys can easily go with this suggested path. IMG minus wouldn't be there. Yeah. So we
Mhm.
are already here. Next, we can go to tags.
Mhm.
We don't use tags in this series. If you
Yeah, but
have to, or you,
A useful
Yeah.
tag could be, describe the image a little bit, what it is, what it contains, what it's being used for, what its
Mm-hmm.
purpose, and maybe, which to which Azure Stack HCI system it should go to, right? Or, what the purpose of it is, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah,
yeah,
I
I
think you
pressed the
mentioned.
create already because
Mhm.
it takes a while. What's happening here, Bernhard?
Yeah,
What's now
so
happening?
you see, first of all, interesting is the type of that resource, right? So it is a specific type. It's not a regular Azure image. It's an Azure Stack HCI Marketplace Gallery image, right? So
Mm-hmm.
a dedicated resource type just for that. So we do get an Azure artifact of that type in our resource group. And it contains, it is a sort of a placeholder, a pointer to a virtual hard disk that is currently downloaded to your Azure Stack HCI system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this deployment will trigger off, it will communicate with your R components or with your Azure Resource Bridge components and instruct it to download an image in exactly that image that you have selected from the Azure Marketplace and store it as a copy, as a virtual hard disk on your cluster, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you would travel to the file system
We can
in
do that,
your,
but first let's see if it's
yeah,
already coming down. So we have to go again
yeah,
and yeah, in this cluster, let's first go to images here, and there should be a second entry, and it should be the status should be downloading, and after a while we also see a percentage here. Okay, now it's downloading, and that's the important part. We now download it from Azure, and the thing is, Azure images have always 127 gigabytes or 130,000 something uh, megabytes, right? And we will do something with that in the next video. Yeah, so
mhm.
now let's have a look where it's maybe be stored.
Yeah, it's
So,
depending a little bit on the way of how Azure was doing it, right? So in Azure, it was never working with dynamically expanding images. It was always the fixed size stuff,
yeah.
and that's the reason probably why you will have a bigger size to download. Actually, you
Mhm.
can create smaller images in Azure, right? But usually the default of 127 is most of the times the default. So that's the reason why you have that
Mhm.
127. But there could be there could be smaller ones, right?
Mhm.
But anyways, yeah, let's travel to
Let
your
me
system.
explain where we are here, right?
Hmm.
So Azure Stack HCI has no GUI, so we could go to the console of one of the nodes, but and then use PowerShell to show you the passes, but it's much more visual to do than an Explorer. So I use an administrator share. Maybe you know that $C is the administrator share with the host name, and then under cluster storage we see our cluster shared volumes. We have 3 here in this cluster, and if you wonder why I use the third node, it's the second cluster, and it's built of the node 3 and 4. So we are here. This infrastructure volume is done by the Azure Stack HCI deployment anyway, and it's also the home of the Arc Resource Bridge, and you should not do anything with this volume because this is a Microsoft volume. When Microsoft updates the resource bridge and other components, it needs that space. And then we have 2 other volumes here. Bernhard already mentioned the user storage 1 and 2 volume. They were automatically created and they are also BitLockered here. If you create your own volume, you would see your names here, and then you have to add the storage paths. Anyway, in one of those volumes, he should place the image. And here you see our scale out file server. And here you see, or you see parallel, you see yeah, how you call it, an hex coded, hex named volume. And if we go in here, we see different resources. And this is the image that we are downloading now. Yeah, you remember I added EMG minus in front of it. Yeah, and it's a file, and you see here it will have 130. Uh, how much megabytes is it? It's 100. No, it's kilobytes. It's 127 gigabytes. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not here yet. We are still downloading it. Yeah?
Mhm.
The file is there yet already. Yeah, but it's still loading into the file, Bernhard.
Yeah, so I mean, if you would open up Task Manager, you would see the download. Basically, not
If I'm let,
everything is downloaded. We are not downloading the nulls, right? So the
yeah.
download will be faster than, but um, it takes a while, right?
So I go to the host. You mentioned
Mhm.
Task Manager. So we are now at the node 3, and we can't be sure if it's downloading on node 3 or node 4. I
Correct.
guess we can look where the Azure Resource Bridge is. I assume, I don't know. Here's our Azure Resource Bridge, and of course it's on node 4. So I assume, I don't know if I'm right, that node 4 will download the stuff and not node 3. So I will
Mhm.
also log into node 3, node 4, sorry.
Mhm.
Task ML. Fortunately, Task Manager doesn't need the MMC. So we have it here, and it should download over this interface here, the management interface. So 19 megabytes, 1.2, 1. I don't know. Is that
I don't know what your internet bandwidth is from your provider, but
a gig? No, I
yeah.
have a gig, but
Mhm.
this card is also only a gigabit. Yeah?
Yeah, so
So we can't
it
exceed
is.
more than a gigabyte.
It seems reasonable, to be honest, right? I don't think that we will provide the full gig download speed, but 200 megabits is, I think,
It's nice.
I think, enough or nice
Yeah.
for
Let's
that.
check the third node,
Mhm.
what's there going on. And there we only have some kilobytes received.
Right.
So you are right. It's on this host. I assume the 200 megabyte is a download.
Mhm.
And it's the host where the resource bridge is running in the moment. So there
Yeah,
we see
and
it.
consider, this is if you are deploying Azure Stack HCI in an edge environment, right? You need to be aware of the bandwidth and the internet capabilities of when downloading that image file, right? So that can take quite a while if you have slow or high latent internet connections, right? So
Mhm.
that may take a lot of time. Um, if you have bad internet connections in an edge scenario, it might justify to do custom images or to preload the images before you deliver the hardware to the remote site, right? Um, and
So I just do a quick calculation. We have 227 gigabyte. If he would download everything of it, I
mhm,
think it's not doing the 130 gigabytes. There is some
yeah,
magic there, but if
yeah,
it would, we would download 130,000 megabytes.
mhm,
If we multiply that by 8, we have the megabits.
mhm,
So this is a million megabits, and
mhm,
we get 200 per second. So if we divide that by 200, roughly, it would
mhm.
take 5,200 seconds to download this 127 gigabytes, right? If I
Right.
didn't miscalculate. And that
Which is
in minutes, it's 1.5 hour.
yeah.
That's a long time, right?
Yeah, and
Is
I
that
think you
true?
would need to calculate with SODISH 8 or, let's take 12 gigabytes for the Windows Server image. Maybe it's even less, right? Because
Yeah,
that's
let's
the
do 12. So this is this much megabytes times 8. This is the gigabytes divided by 200. So we have 491 seconds. And that's in minute is 8 minutes. I think that's better here. Look, 8 minutes, and I don't know how long we are talking about this in the video now, but it seems gone now. And we
yeah.
didn't rehearse that. That was just a coincidence.
Yeah, but
So we,
it's good to know, right, that this is optimized. However,
yeah,
how much space does it take on your disk then?
yeah, we can look here again. So I assume this is the image. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Can
maybe
you
we
give me
get
the
some
file
more
type for
information.
it?
Bitte? please?
The file type,
Yeah,
it's
the
a,
file type, it's a VHD, I would say. Yeah,
yes, it
it is.
is,
Yeah.
right? Okay, is that, you could argue if that is really an optimal format or way on how to store images. I have my opinion on this. You probably guess what it is. Maybe that will change later on somewhere in the product.
Yeah.
Personally, I would, I would optimize that image to something more updated and maybe to a dynamic expanding virtual
Yeah.
hard disk in order to save
I'm
some
with
time.
you and we will do that, but I realized something.
Hmm. Hmm.
Normally Hyper-V, a Gen 2 virtual machine, can't have a VHD file as boot file.
Hmm.
So they changed something in the kernel because this is a VHD and not a VHDX. So nice,
Okay, so
if I'm not
let's
wrong.
maybe,
And
yeah,
here,
maybe,
here you see the size and the size on the disk. So it seems, as you said, on the
mhm,
disk we have roughly 12 gigabytes, and but the size of the file is 127. Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
Okay, so I think let's just check if the what Azure says or what the deployment says. The download seems to be done. So do we have,
We do a refresh, and
right?
here we are. It's
Okay,
available.
so
It's not downloading
mhm,
anymore. And we will also see it in the resource group.
mhm,
Here is it with the
mhm,
same name we gave it. The file has now the name and also our Azure.
right.
It's an Arc artifact, I would say, and here we have it.
Yeah, so
Okay.
this is now placed in the folder and we could now create virtual machines from it, right?
Hmm.
However, so we will conclude that video. However, there might be chances that you would probably dig into that file, right? Just as mentioned before, for optimization purposes or also for customization purposes, because you may want to have a language pack installed to
Hmm.
reflect your language, or to update the systems, or to install your custom applications inside of it in order to have it available for the users that are connecting to it remotely, right?
Yeah,
But that's, I think, the next video, right?
it is. So we will end this one and see you in the next video.